My little brother Jake has always been a gaming fanatic. When I found an old game at a dusty flea market called The Real World, I thought it'd be perfect for him. The box art was strange, just a dark, blurry forest, and the words, "Every choice matters." It seemed like one of those simulation games where you make decisions for a character in a realistic world. Something harmless, something fun. Jake was thrilled and loaded it up the moment we got home. But when the game started, it looked off. The graphics were too realistic for an old game. And even stranger, the setting looked exactly like our town. Every street, every building was eerily accurate. He even found our house, recreated in pixel-perfect detail. At first, Jake treated it like a joke. His character would knock over trash cans, mess with random people, even steal things from a little convenience store on a corner that looked exactly like the one near us. I told him not to do that stuff in real life, but he just laughed it off, saying it was just a game. The next morning, things took a weird turn. When I stepped outside, our normally clean street was littered with trash. Cans, wrappers, old newspapers, all strewn in the same places where Jake had left them in the game. It was a weird coincidence, sure, but I tried to brush it off. Then, Jake played the game again that night. He found his character in a store that looked exactly like our local convenience shop. Jake grinned and made his character swipe a few candy bars and a small trinket from the counter. I nudged him, reminding him again to keep that stuff in the game, and he shrugged me off with a smirk. But the next morning, the store owner came by our house, livid, waving a few empty candy wrappers and that exact same metal trinket. He accused Jake of sneaking in and stealing from his shop the night before. My parents grounded Jake, but I was freaked out. Jake hadn't left his room. He was in the game, stealing virtual candy while he was home in bed. Jake got more cautious after that, but the game had already hooked him. The more he played, the more he couldn't stop. It was like the game was drawing him in deeper, taking on a life of its own. One night, Jake's character found a path leading into a dark, dense forest that was somehow darker than the rest of the game's world. We'd never seen that part of town in real life, but Jake followed it anyway, exploring deeper and deeper. The forest in the game was twisted, eerie, with shadows that moved in unnatural ways. Eventually, he reached a campfire surrounded by NPCs. They didn't look like regular game characters. They had real faces, real eyes, staring out from the screen like they were aware of him. When Jake approached them, a dialogue box popped up with strange options. He could either watch, speak, or push. It was all unsettling, and I told Jake to just walk away, but he chose push anyway. His character shoved one of the NPCs into the fire, and I'll never forget the horrible sound that followed, a muffled scream that sounded too real, too human. The NPC tried to crawl out of the flames, his face melting as he reached toward Jake's character. I felt sick, but Jake just sat there staring, his expression blank. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that screaming NPC burned into my mind, and the next morning the local news was full of a strange story. A hiker had been found near the forest edge, badly burned, mumbling incoherently about being attacked by a pixelated figure. Jake and I stared at each other in silence. This couldn't be real, but I knew, deep down, I knew it was connected to the game. Jake promised he'd stop playing, but after that night, he became different, distant, like something was pulling him back to the screen. He didn't even seem to realize it, but every night he'd sit down and load up The Real World again, his eyes glazed, his hands moving almost automatically. He kept muttering under his breath, saying things like, "It wasn't my choice. I didn't mean to." One night, I decided I needed to see what was really going on. I sat beside him, watching him play. His character was wandering through the digital streets, alone and lost. That's when I realized that there were no other NPCs around anymore. The streets were empty, abandoned, like a ghost town. But as Jake turned a corner, he stopped dead. His character was standing in front of a house, our house, Every detail was there, down to the peeling paint on the porch railing. The front door was open, and inside it was dark, a shadowy figure standing just within the entrance. I whispered for Jake to turn it off, but he wouldn't listen. He was transfixed, his hands moving as if something else were controlling him. He made his character step into the house, moving through the rooms exactly as they were in real life. Then he reached the hallway closet. A prompt appeared on the screen. Open the closet? YN. Jake's finger hovered over the button, and his face pale, eyes wide. Before I could stop him, he pressed Y. The closet door opened, revealing a figure inside, hunched and shrouded in darkness. It didn't move, just stood there, watching, waiting. A new set of options popped up on the screen. Attack, run, watch. Jake's finger trembled over the controls, and I could see him struggling, wanting to choose run, but his hand moved on its own to attack. He clicked it. The screen showed his character lunging forward, swinging a weapon at the shadowy figure. The figure fell, but as it hit the ground, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a small bracelet on its wrist, the same bracelet I'd given Jake for his last birthday. The figure was wearing Jake's clothes. Jake's character had just killed himself. The screen went black, and text appeared flickering on the screen. One life for another. And then the game crashed. Jake didn't move for a long time, just sat there, and staring at the black screen. He finally turned to me, his voice a hollow whisper. I think I'm stuck. After that, Jake wouldn't go near the game. But things didn't go back to normal. He started having nightmares, waking up in a cold sweat, muttering things about choices and shadows. Sometimes he'd get up in the middle of the night and walk to the closet, just staring at it like he was waiting for something. One night, I found him standing in front of it, his hand on the doorknob, mumbling, "It's my turn." I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him, begging him to snap out of it. His eyes cleared, but he looked at me with a strange expression, as if he didn't recognize me. "It's not a game," he whispered, his voice barely audible. It never was. The next day, Jake didn't come home from school. We searched everywhere, my parents calling everyone they could think of, but he was gone. All I had left was that stupid game. I tried to load it up, desperate for some clue, anything to lead me to Jake. The title screen appeared, but this time it looked different. The forest was darker, twisted, and in the background I saw a faint figure standing just at the edge of the screen. It was Jake. His face was expressionless, his eyes empty, pixelated, staring straight at me. A prompt appeared. "Do you want to play?" I didn't want to, but I had no choice. I clicked yes. The screen showed Jake, wandering alone in the empty forest, calling out, "Is anyone there?" His voice echoed, but no one answered. And then, as he walked, the shadows around him began to shift, closing in, swallowing him up. Now, every time I turn on my computer, the real world is there, waiting for me. The icon always reappears, no matter how many times I delete it. And every night I hear Jake's voice, faint, begging me to help him. The last time I opened the game, there was a new prompt. Only one can leave. And I know that if I keep playing, one of us, me or Jake, will be lost forever. But if I don't, I'll hear him every night, calling from the darkness, trapped in that terrible game. And one of these nights, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist when I hear him whisper, "Come find me."